Welcome, everyone, to the Deep Dive, the podcast that skips small talk and goes straight for the concepts that shape our thinking and behavior. In this podcast, cold expertise is defenestrated as warm philosophy is enthroned in an attempt to explore the field in which we're all scientists looking for answers, living well. Hello, world. Welcome to another episode of the Deep Dive with Eyal Shai. Today I'm joined by Sushil Ganesh. Hi, Sushil.
Hey, Al, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, and it's really good to have you here. Really glad we made the connection. Um, I want to hear what you'd like to bring to the table today for us to discuss.
Yeah, so I have been wrestling with this idea that a lot of us have dreams and aspirations. And sometimes what happens is that we tell ourselves that we find excuses not to do the thing instead of finding an excuse to do the thing. I heard this on my podcast from another guest where he said that we should find an excuse to do the thing. And I think at least when I was in the mindset that I was 2 years ago, I was thinking that if I get married, if I have a family, then I won't be able to pursue my dreams. And I can't do this, I can't do that. It was almost like I was blaming everything outside me, my circumstances, for not finding a way to do what I love doing. And the truth is, after I quit my job, left the country, and all of that, left the US, I felt like I was still not doing what I wanted to do. So ultimately the person who was stopping me from doing it was me. And today I wanted to bring an I can do this mindset to this podcast.
Yeah, that's great, and it's something that I think many of us, if not all of us, have run into. At least people who do feel a calling toward producing something, creating. And you're so right. I mean, you're talking about how family gets in the way. In my experience, like when me and my wife were thinking about having a kid, well, having a kid is this thing that you're going to think is going to derail everything you do, right? Because suddenly there's this helpless human that you have to take care of, and just thinking about it is just strange because you know you're going to rock your own world willingly if you're thinking about that, and it makes it very hard to reach a decision. Like there is never a right time, right? You can't. And I do feel that people when they're thinking, like, let's say let's run with the family thing, I feel like a lot of people are waiting for that perfect moment, like graduation, getting the job, whatever. And it's interesting. I do think that many people operate in this way, and I'm not sure that is the best way to do it. And yeah, also, I just today spoke with a friend who is saying, he has many constraints in his life and limitations that stop him from doing all the ambitious things he wants to do in the realm of creating content and courses and so on. And my advice was, you have to embrace the constraint rather than lament the fact that it exists, right? So I wonder if you felt anything like that before, that we have to embrace the limitations rather than fight them.
Oh, for sure, because there's never a right time. The right time is now. And if we keep like pushing it out, then it's never going to come there. As you said, that you're never going to be prepared to be a parent, and you're never going to be completely perfect, or there might be things that scare you. Like if your childhood was somewhat challenging, then at least in my case it was. So there are some factors which come in saying that, oh, if I'm not able to take improve myself a little bit, or if I'm not able to do some inner work, then might be a similar kind of parent. So factors like that, I appreciate if someone takes the time, understand themselves before jumping into parenthood. But you can never be a perfect parent. Even if you put like bubble wrap on them and protect them from the world, from everything out there, there's always going to be some sort of trauma or something they'll blame you for when you're like uh, our age, or when they are like our age. So
Yes.
there's never a perfect moment. Same with, like, for me, I think right now I'm wrestling with the fact that I want to get back into doing comedy, and I'm guilty of this, waiting for the perfect moment. So my external constraint is that I need to live closer to the city. I right now live in the suburb, and the constraint is that I need to live closer to the city to do comedy. And it's a made up constraint, but I have embraced that constraint in a way by saying that, okay, I'm going to find a place closer to the city and move there. So that's what I'm working on right now, and it's scary because I have not done this by myself in a while, in like almost 2 years, like have an apartment and all of that. I quit my job without a plan during the pandemic, and I've stayed with family for a bit, but now I'm just jumping into it and saying that I can do this. It's the mindset. It's like there's a lot of fear, but I can do this is like a mantra in the face of fear.
Yeah, and I really like it. And the whole idea of finding an excuse why to do a thing rather than not to do a thing is novel to me, and I really like it. And I wonder what would be an example of an excuse to do something.
Okay, so I would say that I love being goofy. I just feed off on that energy and
Hell yeah.
just making yeah, it's fun, right? Like wear a
Yep.
colorful shirt, dance in public, make a joke, just put a smile on someone else's face, and it's just a feeling that I thrive on. And that's my excuse. That's why I want to do comedy. It's not because I want to be this performer. I don't. It's not that I want like accolades or something. It used to be earlier. I think it was more like, oh, I want to be someone who can be a famous comedian. But I just started like reconnecting with what the real reason is. It's just I love being silly. I don't like taking things seriously. And these last few years has been the exact opposite. Can you imagine a comedian who takes life seriously? That's a joke in itself.
Oh my god, that sounds horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's definitely like for me I'm trying to think of an excuse to do something. And at the start of the pandemic I worked on a book, and the excuse was, I guess, that society really needed to read this book, and I still believe in it wholeheartedly, but it is something that was really, I needed to find a reason that, yeah, was just trumping all the reasons why not to do it. And another way it makes me look at the I can do this attitude is that the real sense of capability for actually doing things, the belief in yourself that yes, you can do it, that of course the top 1% of performers in any field, they're really special and talented. But to do something, there is absolutely no excuse not to do it because you have a belief that you are not good enough or that you couldn't get better at it. And I think that once you realize that every long journey starts with a small step, one of the best things to tell yourself is like, I can do this. There are a lot of people who are doing this, right? And sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to pass a test or an exam or something like that, and we neglect to look at the fact that a lot of people have passed this exam or did that test, and why not me? I can do this, right?
definitely. And on the point of talent, I think raw talent can be a curse in itself sometimes, because what happens is that people who make it, it's not that they're relying purely on talent, as you said. And what happens with talent is that we get early successes. You are good at school, you excel in your exams, you're able to like pick up skills easily, and you think that everything that happened was just because of the talent. And this is where like mindset comes in. I don't know if you read the book called Mindset by Carol Dweck. It's a really good book
No.
about like two types of mindset. So what happens in the case of some talented people is that like when they experience their first failure, they take that very personally. So if I failed at something, it's a direct reflection of me being bad at something rather than
Mm,
me not having the skills or the technique to get that. So there are two types of mindset. One is the fixed mindset, where failure is like a complete standstill. And I was in this mindset for a long time because I didn't fail early in my life. I would get good grades and there was no room for failure. It's a very South Asian trait that if you want to be successful in life, you have to have like perfect A's, and you have to have the best grades, and you have to get into the best college, get the best job, do all of that. So there was no room for failure. So I never experienced that early in my life. And when I did later in my life, it just became like a complete collapse of my reality. And that was the fixed mindset. And the growth mindset, on the other hand, is when you experience a failure, what you do is that, this technique did not work right now, or what I did right now is not working. What can I do to course correct and go about it again? So the growth mindset relies on consistent efforts, learning from my mistakes, improving, and moving forward. Whereas the fixed mindset would be
absolutely.
like, yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's so true. I mean, this is just as you described it. For me, I felt that halfway through the education system. So basically, when it comes to memory and understanding, picking up things very quickly, I it was very easy for me up until junior high or something, where it just started being more about, here's the material, write it down, because right now there's a lecturer, a teacher just telling you the material. You have to write it down, which I hated doing, because up until then I didn't need to develop the skill of handwriting, which I had problem with anyway because of fine motor skills, right? And then suddenly I needed another skill that I was not talented at. I started getting into this very negative feedback loop of like, hey, I'm not just picking these things and putting it and I'm getting straight A's anymore. And just as you say, I went very fast from, yeah, I can do this extremely easily because this is the set of my talents, to, oh, I don't seem to be able to do it at all because it's boring. It involves a skill that I both hate and never bothered to learn because I didn't need it up until now. And now I'm faced with this sheer wall, right? And it was a whole different game. So now, as I'm trying to piece together a metaphor for embracing the limitations and looking at this, I'm thinking of, at first, my first years in school were like surfing, and it was just this thing of going forward on a wave, and it just came easy for me for whatever reason. But once you're riding the wave, you're riding the wave. Very easy. Um, I know it's not easy. I'm not a surfer, but I imagine there are a few tricks to that. Um, but um, suddenly I went to maybe tree climbing or something like that. And there, my skill set was basically not giving me any branches, right? And branches are, in a way, limitations. There are things that take up space, they don't give up space, but they are exactly the kind of limitations that are going to help you go up a tree rather than impede your progress. And I think this just could be a good metaphor for seeing how you're now playing a different game, and you have to understand that, yeah, it's not going to be easy. Now you're going to be using your arms and a whole different set of muscles, but you actually want constraints, quote unquote, as such as branches on that tree.
yeah, definitely. And the surfing example was funny because it's not easy at all. I surfed for the first time in my life this year, and you're right. It's a lot easier when the wave is with you
Maybe
and you
walking
have
would
the
have been a
momentum.
better. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I mean, getting on that wave, or making it to
Hmm.
a place where you can balance and all of that. I think that's what takes the effort. And I think when there's greater room for failure, I feel, I mean, I don't blame my parents because they came from this abject poverty era of post independence India, and their reality was shaped by starvation and not having enough money, or working right their way through it. And I am very privileged to not have those kind of constraints. But yeah, their reality shaped their parenting in such a way that there's no room for failure. You can't miss your shot. And I feel we are more privileged in this setting, that we have like way more shots than they did, is how I feel. So why not have that I can do this mindset right now when I'm in my 30s, or when I have more room for failure, a longer rope for failure, than being 45 or 50 or 60 and then saying, oh, I didn't do this thing which I really wanted to do.
Right. Yeah, definitely. 100% there on having more freedom to explore. I think it's much more culturally acceptable to try things and fail in the West today. And, founding a startup today is a prestigious thing, even though as a startup founder, you're most likely going to fail in the conventional sense. But the understanding that any kind of failure is really another branch that you've now found and is going to help propel you forward because of the lesson learned. That's a major development, and it's a very 21st century thing for sure. And yeah, I guess would you say that though for parents' generation, and I can do this attitude, the maybe the constraints were more constricting. I mean, I feel like there is a point where yeah, you can't afford to jump to another branch and hope to land the thing, because if you fall, you do fall and you don't get up.
Yeah. And on the branches topic, when you were talking about that, what came to mind was this really cool visualization where you were like a point in time saying that you're here, and there were like infinite branches like sticking out towards the past, and they were all grayed out because you've taken like one path to get there, and all the opportunities that you had in the past, they're closed down. But the magical part was going forward, right? Every branch or every possibility was still open because you have not played out that road yet. And
Hmm.
I'm not sure who had posted this. I think it was Tim Urban, but I would like find it for your listeners for the show notes or something and send it your way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The life, the things that it could have been and how it looks in the end. And yeah, I know that image. And for sure, I think actually, if you're touching on this point, that's a very FOMO thing, right? That we have to deal with because of the many options. It's not one and not two psychologists have observed that um, the availability of many options is not necessarily a good thing psychologically, right? To be psychologically healthy, you can be overwhelmed by the possibilities that you can take, and you can cherish the possibilities so much that you're not trying to specialize even in the smallest way. And really, in the end, it means that you are like an artist looking at a block of wood that could be many different beautiful sculptures, and you dare not touch it, right? Because if you made this engraving here, it couldn't be that, or and so on. And that's a kind of paralysis, which I think the I can do attitude uh, is out there to fix exactly that, because eventually we better get started. We better make a mistake. You know what? Any kind of impression you leave on a piece of wood that you're about to work, if you're not happy with it, just just take that whole part off, and you'll have a more miniature sculpture. But you could begin again with some knowledge that you've earned.
Yeah. And what stuck out there was like, yeah, the FOMO. We're not Homo sapiens, we're FOMO sapiens, because
Oh yeah.
I it affects all of us. It's not only people who are uh, it's not only people who don't have their world together and struggle with that. It's I have so much FOMO. And when you were saying all of that, right, I went in like my mind went in like a loop of, oh no, he's talking about me. Because I've been in that situation where the analysis paralysis, oh, if I take this place, then I will not have this. Right now I'm apartment hunting, and I'm being very mindful about like not going down this path, because that's like that's the excuse not to do the thing, right? Like constantly looking for something better to come along. And I think
Right.
it's the bane of the existence of millennials, because we have this scroll culture, or we were introduced to this like in our teens and our 20s, where something better is always coming along, in terms of there's a better meme, there's a funnier video, there's a better match on online dating, and we're always looking for like the next path. And if we apply that same principle of something better is coming to our life, then we are spending the entire life waiting. And I know, yeah, being in my 30s now, I know that there's not enough time.
Yeah, swiping. I don't know. I never had Tinder, but I guess it's just swiping left is
You're so lucky.
not take. I am. Honestly now I am. But I guess it's swiping left, like to see the next picture. So basically, we spend our lives swiping left, right?
Yeah, so swiping left is like basically closing off that path. It's like, I'm not taking this. I mean, obviously they have to
Yeah,
swipe as well, but
right.
it's like, let's say if you have a match and you're talking to someone, and then you're like, okay, this is going well, but then your mindset would be like, oh, maybe there's someone I'm more compatible with, or there's someone who's better. And
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
this is and I find a lot of I have a lot of beef with the optimizers in life. I really do not like the term when people are trying to optimize really almost anything. And I recorded an episode about this with Tesho, titled "Good, Better, Best," where I kind of try and go into the whole thing that I have, because I think we should be a lot more accepting of the fact that nothing is going to ever be fully optimized. We can't look at any choice. Like, in terms of physics, it's impossible to find something that is straight tens. It's like on 10 different parameters, it's a 10, right? Um, and we should really be thinking about in ranges of like, yeah, this is decent, this is acceptable, this is good enough. And I think this is what creates movement forward, and this is what can save us from this place where we're stuck and we're swiping left all the time because we're afraid not to be with the perfect thing. And in the end, what creates a more beautiful story, right? When you're looking at it from a distance, what creates a more beautiful story? A person who is kind of passively looking at things go by and waiting for the perfect coach to jump on, or the person who is just trying things and failing miserably, and sometimes is the butt of a joke, right? Sometimes it's like you just jump under and you slip on a banana and you're humiliated.
Yeah, the perfect story is the one that is actually happening and not just in your head. And
Right.
it, yeah, and you're right, like you have to have a sense of humor about it. And as I said, coming back to my point about taking life too seriously, I think that's one of the biggest excuses not to do the thing. Because in India we have this concept, or I think we have it all over the world, but we say log kya kahenge. It means, what will people say about me
Uh-huh.
if I have brought embarrassment to my family, or I have brought like shame to my family. I used to have a good job, and now I'm living off my savings, blah, blah, blah. All that chatter gets in the head. Like, what will my neighbors, brother in laws, sisters, father in laws, daughters, husband think about what I've done in my life? You just invent these
Right.
people who will find a fault or find some mistakes with what you'll do. And that's the biggest excuse. It's like, what will people think about me? And the funny thing is, nobody gives a crap about you in the true sense. People are caught up in their own BS, they're caught up in their own thoughts and everything, but we have this projection that if I do this, I look bad in front of X number of people who eventually I don't care about either. And that's
Yeah,
like one of the blockers to get through.
yeah, and the funny thing is that your family members, which are going to not approve the choices you make, are doing it for the very same reason, right? So it's like, what are the neighbors going to say? Which is even even stranger, right? Because it's not even them. They're like identifying with you and your choices, which is weird. Like, I don't think we should identify with anybody else and their own choices and what they choose to do in their life. Like, if my dad does something embarrassing, that it shouldn't really project on me and say that, oh, I'm related to them. Um, but once you realize that they are going to think the same way, and it's like this endless chain of what are people going to think. And actually, it's like 3 degrees of separation, right? Let's say it's your father who you're afraid of letting down, or what he's going to think, and he's thinking it about the neighbors. Like, it really makes no sense to think that about other people in the world. It's like, not the whole world is not going to care about what Sushil does. It's like it dissipates very quickly. Like, probably just outside of your immediate family, nobody cares anymore.
It's very true. And but we like doing that. We like, as you said, as we spoke about earlier, we like, sorry about that, we like creating this cage. It's almost like we are so addicted to this. Oh, I could have done this but I don't, like almost like we're addicted to the suffering. Like it's like a unhealthy kind of juice which keeps us resentful. Or when you see someone else doing the thing that you love, and then you think that, oh, I could have done this, but I would rather just
Yeah,
mope
I
about
I,
it.
I was
And
just I was yeah, I was just going to say that, there's the I cannot do this attitude, there's the I can do this attitude, and maybe what people really don't want to experience is the could I do it attitude, which could I have done it attitude, which I think they really want to keep away from.
yes, for me personally, I have been in that mindset, saying that other people doing things that I love, and I'm like, oh, I'm being so mopey and irritated about it and constantly complaining. And it's such work. It's so much work to be miserable. It's less work to be out there doing the thing than just constantly being miserable and upset about like what other people are doing and what other people are thinking. I feel it takes so much energy to be the person that you'll realize that you're spending all of that energy wasting it away when you can actually be putting into like finding solutions. And
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, the decision to actually pursue a project of passion, writing a book in the beginning, and then when I lost the passion for that, moving to podcasting, which I really love, so massively healing, so massively healing. So I mean, it could be a trite saying, but taking a huge stone off my chest. And um but it's still something that I'm thinking a lot about, because yes, there is an attitude of I can do this, but I'm very, very interested about that moment, about making the actual step of breaking away with tradition and actually doing the thing. So I want to hear a little bit about your experience with comedy, because I'm interested in that personally. I told you when we talked before, privately, that I have this calling to like do comedy in some form of another, and to me it takes a lot of guts to do it. And yeah, I'd love to hear about your experience deciding to do it, preparing to do it, and actually doing it for the first time, if you don't mind.
for sure. So it goes back to when I was in school. And I would always like being in plays, doing elocution, and being this performer was always an aspect which was there in me. And I would also tell like these really bad jokes, in terms of I would make like jokes about like puns and breaking words and looking at like different ways of reconstructing it. And it's always like a facet of my mind which I've been fascinated by, was that there is this thread. If you know like computers, there's like a thread of process running. There's always this background thread which is thinking of jokes or something immediately
Mm.
in response to say. And that's when I realized that oh yeah, there's like this constant machine that makes jokes or something in my head. But I didn't
Uh
think
huh.
about comedy back then. And when I was roughly 12 to 13 years old, Seinfeld aired in India for the first time. Or, the show Seinfeld started airing on this Indian channel. It was being syndicated. And I saw Jerry Seinfeld do this joke. And he did a joke about how the dryer is like a nightclub for clothes, and how all the clothes are like dancing together, and like there's a one sock grabbing another sock, and they're like having a fun time. And when you open the door to the dryer, everyone is like nothing has happened. They're like going still, like they don't want to be caught. And it was such a simple concept, but the entire room was like roaring with laughter. And I saw that and I felt like I want to do that someday. I want to be in a room where I grab the mic and make people laugh with my words. And I was always fascinated by that concept. And fast forward to second year engineering, I had the opportunity, or there was like this call for performances for the 25th anniversary of our college. And they needed someone to fill like a 5 to 7 minute slot, because the band was setting up behind the curtain, and they didn't want like dead air. They didn't want there to be no entertainment during that duration. And I
Hmm.
thought maybe I could write a few jokes. I wrote a bit about like the Indian wrestler who became champion in the WWE, and I was doing an impression of his voice. And also there was another skit which I was doing, which was an as seen on TV commercial. Like, when you have like these belts,
Okay.
they
Yeah.
say, I was 400 pounds before and I wore this and I'm like 100 pounds now. and and the funny thing about those ads was, when they were in India, you would see that they were dubbed in Hindi. So there would always be these white people who are talking about like being fat and becoming fit, but all of it is in Hindi. So that in itself was a funny premise. So me and my friend, we did like this 7 minute skit, and it was an amazing experience, because first of all, the audience was not there to see us. We were like
Hmm.
this filler act. And
Right.
what happened was, it was a full auditorium, 900 people. I mean, that's the most number of
Wow.
people I've done comedy for.
Wow.
It's India. It's
What?
India,
Oh
so
yeah. There
there
are
are a
a
lot
lot
of
of
people.
people.
But there's a big auditorium and there are so many people there. And we were bombing at the start, and then we captured the audience and everyone laughed. And then it just, what a great feeling that you were able to like make so many people laugh. And a lot of people came up after the show and they said that, oh, actually, this was the best performance, although it was like a filler. It was
The
really the most
highlight.
entertaining yeah. And then I felt like I should do comedy. I want to do comedy a lot more. And that's when I started doing. Full disclosure, since the pandemic and since going through many depressive episodes in my life, I have not been able to do comedy. And I really am looking at it. And that's why I wanted to talk about I can do this. It's not about the listeners. It's not about like telling you that you can do it. It's about like coming on a podcast and telling people that I can do this, and having that mindset. Okay, it's been 2.5 years. I've had enough time to assess and work through some of the challenges, but now I'm ready. I want to get back out there.
That's amazing, and I think the world is waiting for you. Even though I guess in Canada you can expect an auditorium with 30 people if I'm comparing the population sizes. Um,
30 is a
but
good start.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, no, I think it's amazing. I think it's very different from many of the early like stand-up comedy experiences that I have heard from comedians going on podcasts and so on. I think that many of them expressed um, a lack of belief in themselves, or not being sure if they can do this. And there's also the skit that's famous by now, or the bit where Bill Burr does that bit in front of a crowd that's waiting for a concert in Philadelphia, I think, and they boo him the whole thing until it just starts shouting at them and fighting back. And in the end, they really appreciate it. But that was an experience of a comedian doing a sketch when they didn't expect it. They went to see a concert and they didn't have any sort of patience for him to do his thing. But they were fueled with alcohol. They weren't nice students in a school. So I'm
Worst
I'm
places to
really
do comedy,
happy.
like a
What's
concert
that?
where people are waiting. I mean, the worst setting to do comedy is when people are waiting for someone else. And if it's a
Right.
restaurant,
Yeah.
yeah, if it's a restaurant and there's a table, people are eating, there's so many bad settings in terms of like people are so caught up in their own conversation. It's horrible. Like I've seen comedians, some of my friends from Seattle, who would post videos of them like fighting back with hecklers. And I don't know, it's difficult to do comedy sometimes because people are like entitled and in their mindset that my own stuff is more important. By the way, do you curse on this podcast, or are you trying to keep it
Yeah. You can. Yeah.
kosher?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Get it out. Everything that you needed to get out. You can.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can unload.
That's what she said.
Uh,
I'm sorry.
um, yeah. It's yeah. I have heard that before, that you shouldn't do comedy instead in front of people that eat. But your story kind of uh, brings some hope to my heart. Although now I'm running through the scenarios of me going to a school to do that and finding out that 20 years later, well, the kids are different. I think they're all going to be hecklers this time.
Yeah. Oh man, don't get me started on that because people have lost touch with the concept of it's a joke. To some degree in today's world, I feel, imagine if you went to a comedy show and you gave the comedian a script and you're like, "Oh, these are the things you can say." And,
Right.
yeah, you make us laugh by saying only these things. It's almost that mentality is coming in where people are not like seeing it as satire or commentary on how ridiculous things are right now, as opposed to everything has become more like audience centric or me centric. Or like Bill Burr is a great example.
Hmm.
He was telling some jokes about he was in the UK and he said that, oh, making jokes in America has become so awful. And
Right.
he was talking about like how being outside the country was like a boon. And he says that anytime you make a joke, you're like, is he talking about me? Is it me? And everyone is like me centric, and my problems and my own BS, which you're projecting onto the comedian. And the same thing we spoke about, like from an I can do this mindset. It's like your own BS you project onto your neighbors, onto your parents, onto your
Hmm.
family. It's almost like it comes back full circle. We are all guilty of this. I am guilty of this as well.
Yeah, it's well, now I'm thinking, if people are stuck in the "I cannot do this" mindset, there's also a tendency to develop an attitude of like, "You can't do this either," right? Just I'm I'm going to do everything in my power to make you not believe in yourself. I feel like that's a real thing, by the way.
Yeah, because misery sells products, right? If you see Instagram, it's basically an ad engine or an ad wedged between two posts that make you miserable. You'll see someone who is living the perfect life, and you'll see someone who is like whatever, they're like vacationing somewhere in Hawaii, someone who is attending like this fabulous live music event, and between that you'll see an ad which is like, oh, are you miserable, take this pill or take this drug that we have, and then you'll be fine. And I think there's that energy of, you're right, if I am miserable then everyone around me has to be miserable, why should anyone else be happy? And it's almost the victim mindset. If there's this book called The Empowerment Dynamic, which I read recently, and it talks about how humanity is stuck in this drama triangle of victim, savior, and oppressor. And there are the three roles that people keep switching over and over about. As in, if you take the comedy example, the comedian who tells the joke is perceived as the oppressor, and the person who's listening who
Hmm.
feels attacked, that's the victim. And then the person who's attacked, what they say is like, okay, they have like a community which backs them, and they're like, oh, we'll
Right.
support you and we will destroy this comedian and everything. And then what happens strangely in that scenario is that, let's say this band of people go ahead and cancel a comedian, the comedian becomes a victim because he has been cancelled, the original
Hmm.
victim becomes the oppressor. And yeah, then we
Hmm.
have a new person looking for the savior role, like free speech absolutists. Like they're like, oh, the comedian can say whatever he wants, we should protect free speech, they become the new saviors. So yeah, we
Yeah,
are stuck in
that's
that triangle.
yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, that's such an interesting dynamic, and you see it with either the politically, if you go very far into the right or to the left, that's what you see, right? Or the people who feel that they've been victimized, so that gives them the justification to um, persecute other people, and the most normal people at that, right? It's the attack of on normal people, always. Um, yeah, it's really fascinating how people are in love with this victim mentality, and I wonder if that's something that is more culturally prevalent these days, or in the past. Yeah, there was just not much to do about it, so it's just how you lived life. But
Hmm.
I yeah, I can't recommend enough, getting out of that. And I guess I sound like a type of guru, which I don't want to do because I don't have I don't have good actionable advice. Well, I do. Be silly. It goes back to be silly, don't be in love with the persona you want to put on and project onto the world, because this is it, right? I mean, the victim mentality is kind of just the easiest way to keep some sort of persona and project something that is widely accepted. But if you manage to see that you can go out there and you can be silly, you can appear ridiculous, and the sky doesn't fall, I think that puts a crack in um, the whole kind of house that houses this persona of yours, that is needs to be curated at all times. Like, that is, there is something healing about again, being silly and goofy. So do you find a reason? Do you think it's just temperament for some people that they look forward to the moments where they can be goofy and silly, or is this a could this be a learned thing?
Oh, it's a learned thing for sure. and
Yeah,
and as
okay.
you said, the victim mindset is also a learned thing. And you're
Mm-hmm.
right, it's probably more rampant now because everyone has a platform. Everyone who wants to have a platform has a platform. Like, you have TikTok, you have Reels, you have any form of entertainment. I'm not saying that these people have not been wronged. Okay, at the original part of, they might have gone through some experience where there was like an original trauma where people made made fun of them, or they were wronged by someone who made them feel little. I have been in that situation. I'm sure a lot of people have been there. Let's say if people are who are like having eating disorders or not able to like uh, control something, so that aspect of their life, maybe they were assaulted or shamed or something at a very early age, and that's the mentality that has really progressed later into their life. I have been in that situation. I'm working very actively with functional therapy, with group groups that I do in a therapeutic setting, where we explore like behavioral patterns and how we can overcome them. So I am like a perfect subject for this, saying that it's a learned behavior of learning to do the thing over time, because I was definitely trapped in this mentality that I have been dealt a shit hand, and the world sucks. I have depression, I have lupus, I have this, I have that. And and now I feel, and that became my identity, because when I would talk about this and tell my friends that I'm going through this, they would be like, oh, poor you, or I feel
Mm-hmm.
bad for you, you have a tough life. And it's like validation. It's almost like doing comedy from a very miserable angle. You're going on stage, you're
Right.
talking about your miserable life and everything, and everyone like, oh, poor you. And that's like the applause or the validation that you get. And it's addictive. You'll see a lot of people on TikTok saying that, oh, this person is this person is that, I'm been victimized. And then there are like people are like, oh, that person should die, that person sucks, blah blah blah. And you see, oh, I spoke about like my how my life sucks, and I got validation. And that is happening to me, that can happen to anyone. So it's a learned behavior, because we're like, no matter how fancy we think we are, we're all like Pavlov's dog. We get like that pill of validation, or we get like that positive or that reinforcement we get, and then we're addicted to that. And the same way, you can undo that. And as I mentioned, the book Empowerment Dynamic gives some tools where you can change the mindset of victim, to, like, I think it's hero, or it's I forgot the exact terminology, but the oppressor in the new triangle becomes a challenger, someone who is posting challenges to you. So let's say if someone
Mm-hmm.
is like making fun of you or insulting you or triggering you, then that person is challenging you to grow, that you don't have to react to this, that you
Right.
don't have to have the same level of you know same lower level of reaction that you used to have, and you can have a different reaction to it. And the other role, I think, instead of savior, which is also a very sensationalized concept. The problem with the savior is that you're reliant on someone else to do the work for you. Like, you cannot like take care of your own stuff, and you can't, like, you're not empowered in that setting. So the new role for that would be that of a coach. So this
Mm-hmm.
person helps you use your own power to get through that. And I'm in that setting, is that like this, the work that I do with a therapist, is it's actually helping me become powerful by myself, as opposed to being relying on
Right.
on the external.
Yeah, yeah, that's lovely, and I'd like to share a personal story of mine as well that I think connects nicely with this. Is in my teenage years when I was depressed. I think towards the end of the period of the depression. First of all, I can definitely say that. And I can do this attitude has developed over time, but I think one of the triggers that brought it about was my sister. I have a sister who's 15 years um, older than me, and at some point she was doing something which could be by a lot of people would be considered insensitive, but you're right. I was riding the wave again, to go back to the metaphor. I was riding the wave of losing my mom at a young age, and I just had this story and this habit of telling people, it was like, I'm this poor kid. I lost my mom. And it's just, like, just as you say, it just became a pattern and a habit. And my sister, when I got to be 17, 18, she started telling me, just like, stop self-pitying yourself, right? Stop with it. Enough with the self-pity. And I think for a lot of people, that would be an act of oppression, right? It's like, why isn't she containing him? Why isn't she uh, sitting with him for as long as he needs to talk about his problems and stuff? And to some degree, I weirdly agree with both things, but when I look at the result of the kind of intervention and the kind of intervention that this sister gave me, it did wonders for my for what I was trying to do, right? Because it was like, enough with this. Okay, it got me to think. It was like, well, this is really not serving me, right? This whole attitude, because what happens? I'm just, the years are going by, and I'm this victim. I'm not doing well. It's not actually making me feel well. Like, at this point, it's just something that I repeat. It gets some sort of attention from people. It probably gets old with them too, so I might not even notice, but they probably just move along to other people who are less of a energetic vampires at some point. And that really kickstarted a shift toward an I can do this attitude, and I'm grateful for that. And I wonder if we all need some of that, and what the balance is, because of course we want to be contained, we want to be soothed, and so on, but we also need to be, as you say, challenged, because this is making you face some obstacle that you haven't known, which, if you're now looking at it, could actually be a springboard for you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that story. And it's true that, when you're going through it, you're not able to see it. There's no consciousness in that. When you're like in that mentality that you have been dealt a crap shoot of a hand, and why me happens a lot, and then you're not able to see that. But the answer to that is building that inner adult, or like a conscious mind of actually being able to see your life from a third person perspective, or like a bird's eye view. So, and that's the answer. It's like it takes a lot of time, and you have to keep. It's not easy. It's very easy to just go back to old patterns. And definitely, you spoke about energetic vampires, and I'm very curious where you heard that term, because we are in like this transactional world where we have these games, or these exchanges that keep happening between people. And I've read a little bit about this, and we've spoken about this with my therapist. It's about like saying that, like, when you talk about like self-pity or something like that, you're like getting energy of oh, poor you, from someone else, and that's like your reward for that. And
Yeah.
similarly, yeah, similarly, let's say if you're in a relationship where you're constantly provoking each other, and someone says something insulting, and you are like in your baseline, and then they keep like prodding you, and then you just throw a fit, you lose your state of mind, and you have a rage incident. Then that's a lot of energy, and that person who provoked you, like, unconsciously is feeding off that energy. And the vampires, I don't know, are like external entities that are like feeding off each other constantly, and it's not like really what our like base consciousness, or like our consciousness without this extra baggage, is like. So I found that very interesting. And maybe your sister was like feeling like the victim. Oh, this guy is talking about himself constantly and acting all miserable. We all have lives to live. Yeah, and she acted out and then became the oppressor.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I should ask her at this point. It's been many years, so it is interesting. I mean, she surely was frustrated. It's frustrating, and I wonder if, when you mentioned like transactions, were you actually thinking of transactional analysis? Like, is there,
Yeah, yeah.
because
There's
okay,
a
yeah.
there's
So transactional analysis, yeah, is great. At really, I love looking at it, and the games that are mentioned, that people playing their dynamics, and
Oh, that's a
yeah,
great book as
if
well. Games people play.
it's yeah, it's really good, and it's a very interesting framework to work with, and it makes sense, because you see this simple, basically two by two table, right? And it's there are a few games, but basically the desired state when two people are meeting one another, and the transactions they have between them is the feeling that I'm okay, you're okay, right? And
Mm.
it can be that I'm not okay and you're okay. Well, at least one game, I'm not sure I remember all of them, but at least the very common one is the yes, but, right? And it's extremely common and extremely frustrating, and it's this something that we all know, but it's basically coming to a person, giving them a reason, kind of reasoning with them about, okay, let's tie this back to the I can do this thing. It's like you're going to give them a reason why, yeah, they can get out there tomorrow and do their gig and or apply for that job or write that paper, right? You give them all the reasons, and like it's very reasonable, and it's a well constructed argument, and what you hear from them is yes, but. And this is in a sense like much this is much worse than no, you don't understand, there are these other things. Like, you just said yes, and now you're introducing but. So in a sense, you could have said no, but you're saying yes because you want to keep me hooked into this. You want me to come with these things. You want to appear to be agreeing with me so that I keep doing it.
Mm.
Really, you're saying yes, but you're saying no and bringing up. Now you're going to try and reason back why no, it's not time for you to do the gig, to write the paper, to apply for the job. And
That person is not
this is
looking for a solution. I feel like when you said
exactly,
that,
exactly.
they
So
just they
this
just want
mhm.
this transaction where they say this is the excuse, my life sucks and I can improve it, but there's like these x number of reasons. Just agree with me and say that my life sucks because that's the juice I want to get from you.
Right, right. And this is, if the it's a it's a very annoying part of reality, is that you cannot make anyone agree with you. And if you do it by force, if you hold a gun to their head or something, they might do it. It's not true, and you've escalated the situation because they might point a gun back at some point. You cannot make anybody agree with you. You need good faith, and you need goodwill. And the people who get on the yes but treadmill and keep doing that, that is going to suck the energy out of you. And of course, you need sensitivity to deal with that. You can't just burst their bubble in a violent way and make them change their way. It's impossible. But it should it should set off an alarm and a red flag, where you now see a problem that needs to be addressed and solved, um, in very likely very creative ways.
Yeah, and anyone can do this with the right resources, with some level of consciousness and seeing their patterns. And when you said the yes but, and then I was like, oh, I'm preaching on this this podcast, and I did this last week. So I was like, it was like an exercise in consciousness and awareness for me, and self-awareness, where I was looking at a certain problem in my life, and then I was in conversation with someone who was like, you could do this. And then I was like, yeah, but yes, but exactly. That was the same terminology. And I'm like, it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Podcasting is
it's
like
so
therapy,
common.
to be honest. Podcasting is like you see versions of yourself, or you see yourself from so many different angles as a guest and as a host. And that's what I have, like, that's what I got from my own podcast, Heal with Sushil, as well, is that I call on guests, and I feel like each week it's not just about like me fixing the world or giving other people solutions. It's more like I'm finding solutions to improve my own life and get to being a better person each day.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, for me, the biggest yeah, I benefit from this. I hopefully my guest, you in this case, benefits from this, and listeners who can take something away. I wouldn't do a podcast where I think that I am just this beacon of wisdom that can just transmit everything to everyone, but knows everything. That's the kind of attitude that makes me sick. Um,
Mm.
yeah, absolutely. And that's, getting other people into the picture, as we discussed, the I can do this. That's also an interesting thing to discuss and think about, is that what can you do to be a person, um, to be the person to other people who empowers them, who does that, who can really, yeah, make other people believe that they can do this. I don't know. Have you experimented with this at all?
That's that's kind of the vision for everything that I do. It's it's almost like living by example. If I can be so messed up, if I can have so many things which need work, and do the work and actually do the things that I love doing, then anyone can do it. With like depression, autoimmune disease, poor health, addiction, anxiety. I have all the checklist of buzzwords that scream mental illness. And if I can work through that, and actually ADHD, I missed that. If someone like me can do it, then anyone can do it, is the kind of message that I want to bring into the world.
Yeah, I really love it. And uh, yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I'm also thinking, understand that in this day and age, there is no proven way to go through life where you are going to end up successful, because the definition of success changes. And for me, especially, like thinking about doing well, then success in the mainstream sense really makes no sense. And really telling people that from a young age, I think giving them the space to fail, which it sounds like you never had. And as you point out, there were good reasons why this came about. But update the software, right? Update the program, and realize that in the day and age that we live in, I think young people should be encouraged to try things and fail, and see that the sky isn't falling, and that there is another day to try a new thing. And I really love the leading by example thing, because I think in essence, anyone who has made it, even if it's in the mainstream sense, right? Like a sports player, an actor, somebody who's just become very good at something that happens to be very prestigious in our culture and is therefore put on a pedestal. If you ask yourself, like, how did they do it? Well, there are two ways to go about it. Like, you can break it down into the components of like how many hours a day they trained and so on, and you'll very soon find that it actually wasn't that pleasant. Like, you're probably not going to repeat the experience yourself. But in another sense, I know it's kind of tautological and stupid, but how did they do it? Well, they did it. I mean, they actually went and tried and did it, right? I mean, they they didn't tell themselves all the yes buts. They did not stop with that. They did not give themselves. They did it. And you know what? You don't see all the hours of just unsuccessful attempts at, and all the times where they were too tired to train and still did it, and all the misery behind it. You don't see that. You just see the end product and think it's like, wow, they must be so special. Well, they are, in the sense they could be very talented, and they are very talented if they're in the top 1% of their field. But um, really, the most unique thing is that they actually got off their butt and started working out.
Yeah. When you said how did they do it, they did it almost like spat out my tea. And no, but that's it. That's the answer. There's no secret sauce. You have to keep showing up. It's painful sometimes, but pain today is gain tomorrow is like the gym cliche. I don't know why I said that, but it makes sense.
It's well, the whole podcasting world is just like two people trying to end
Out
up
cliche each other,
understanding that
right?
cliches are true. Yeah, in the end, they're just like, yeah, absolutely. I think that if I'm going to, let's do it like that. Like I'll give to conclude maybe an actionable something advice that I think is actionable, and then I'll want to hear one from you. But mine would be, um, yeah, definitely do something silly tomorrow. Make something that actively damages the kind of image that you've wanted to curate up until this day.
That's amazing. I don't want to add to that, but I would say something I've been experimenting with. If you're struggling with the excuse saying that I don't have enough time, you can try what I'm trying this week. So this week I'm on day 4 right now. I'm not using my phone until noon for starters. I'll not touch my phone. And I've noticed that so much time has opened up in my mornings. I'm constantly distracted by the phone, going back and forth. And I've noticed that, like, keeping technology aside for a little bit and being present in your morning is a great way to unlock, like, that extra bit of time to do the thing.
Yeah, that's sound advice for sure. Yeah, hands off the phone, motherfucker. Yeah,
Unless you're listening to this podcast, then
of course. Yeah, if you're listening to it at 8 a.m., keep listening. It's fine. We didn't mean that. Very bad advice, Sushil. Yeah. um, Yeah, this has been wonderful, and even though it's not specifically for your podcast of healing, I do feel that it was healing, and I'm looking forward to recording one on a slightly different topic for your wonderful podcast soon. Um, yeah, so I'd love for you to share with listeners any kind of details about where your thoughts can be found and your work and anything else you do, because I know it's not just comedy and it's not just podcasting. So yeah, go ahead.
so yeah, one of the good byproducts of having a neurodiverse mind is that you have a lot of hobbies and interests, and I'm grateful for that. So I do a weekly podcast called Heal with Sushil, which can be found at healwithsushil.com. And I also do a newsletter which goes with that, with at healwithsushil.substack.com. And yeah, I love painting. One of my passions is turning waste material and garbage into art on canvas, and I post my paintings and artwork on the Art Conduit on Instagram. And it's been an absolute pleasure working with Al, and I hope you check out his podcast and, yeah, give him a thumbs up because he's putting some awesome content out there.
Yeah, thanks so much, Cecilia. It's been great, and I'm gonna propose something which I hope you're going to take. As soon as you do get up on stage and do your first gig in 2.5 years, then I'd love for us to catch up and put up a short special episode of how it went. So
Oh, that's amazing. Let's do it.
yeah, all right. Well, it's been a great pleasure, and until next time, which is not far away.